a brand new Fender Jazzmaster guitar. This is a signature model, maple fingerboard, block inlays. The binding is not actual binding, painted on very neatly and nicely. Single coil P90 hot single coils, rhythm switch on the top there. The two knobs there are corresponding volume and tone. Here's a close-up of the headstock of the Jazzmaster. Colored headstock that matches what they call, I think, a penny copper finish or something similar to that. Again, another shot of the gloss finish on the maple fingerboard. The neck is all one piece maple. There's no separate fingerboard. It does have an adjustable truss rod. The truss rod on this particular model is located at the heel of the neck, so you have to take the neck off of the body. There's not an access hole there, even though you can see it from the pickguard. There's not an access hole routed into the body itself. The P90 pickups are very hot. When I first got this guitar in and I plugged it in right away, I found a grounding problem, which we'll review as it gets it into there in the video. It does have the lock on the tremolo as well, although the lock is not currently functioning the way that it's a standard problem on the ones from Mexico because of the way that inside of that bolt locks against the plate. We're going to see if the client wants me to go ahead, and there's a remedy of that, which is sanding the little corresponding piece that you move there flat so that when it makes contact with that base plate, it keeps it in place better. That switch right there that I'm pointing to is the pickup selector for the neck or the bridge pickup. When that switch on the top is in the down position, you get the bottom set of electronics. When it's in the top position, you get the top set of electronics, which is only referring to that neck single coil, and it puts it through different volume. That's the tone I'm pointing to right there, and the tone has a different capacitor on it. The other odd thing is it will sound different anyway because it puts it through a different value potentiometer and capacitor up on that rhythm circuit, so it sounds a little darker, a little quieter, but it's something that's unique to the Jazzmaster. Now, when you use both pickups together, I'm pointing right here to the bridge, which the bridge actually will move back and forth a little bit with this type of tremolo. It rocks inside what they call thimbles. And what I'm explaining here is that when I have it plugged in, it was buzzing horribly, much worse than it would with just single coil pickups. And what I'm discovering as I'm touching the ground of the cord there is that there's a ground missing inside somewhere of this particular guitar. So I'm thinking, first of all, it might be a broken ground, but I'm seeing that the strings aren't grounding at all. So I deduct fairly quickly that it's the bridge right here. So the thimble that's on the treble side of the strings there, the thimble that is showing underneath there in the recess there, that's the bass side thimble. That thimble is usually soldered to a ground wire right here, and that wire goes to that control cavity and provides the ground of you as the player to the strings. Well, that ground appears not to be in place because when I put my fingers over the chord ground there, you can see that the buzz goes away. So I'm doing some sampling here, and I can pull that volume back in as I'm going through. But again, it's buzzing horribly, and I'm at this point, I got to take it apart to see what's going on. So I'm letting the customer know, there's some things going on with this guitar. We're going to get it taken all care of, but we need to dissect it a little bit further than just giving it a once over. So I'm going to go ahead and start to break it down here. We'll go through that. The one thing about this guitar, while all this stuff is really cool and has lots of different options, that's a lot of stuff that they stuff in underneath this pickguard. So there's lots of screws that hold everything in place. The pickguard goes around that assembly for the bridge saddles right here. And then what we encounter here coming up in the video is that the saddle itself is what probably chopped off, not the saddle, but the thimble underneath the saddle on the treble side there is more than likely what cut that wire on the inside to begin with. So the other thing I'm mentioning here is that the factory intonation on this is almost spot on, and I'm just mentioning here again that you can move that bridge a little bit back and forth underneath the strings, and that sometimes happen when you're playing a lot, and that can make a difference if all of them are out of intonation. If all of them are coming up flat, you would push that saddle closer to the neck, and if they're coming up sharp, you would push it closer to the tremolo unit itself. that bridge back there. But it's set up almost exactly right on where it rides, where it's supposed to, right in the middle. This point in time, I have all of the screws out of the pick guard, and with a Jazzmaster, the pickups are separate sets of screws that keep them on, which I want to keep in the guitar and use as minimally as possible because they are soldered to a copper plate underneath. I don't know if I get that there. You can see the cord right there. I have the ground going in towards the bridge right there, and as soon as I pull on it, which I don't have on camera here when I come up, but basically, as soon as I pulled on that ground wire that went into the cavity of that, I can see that that ground has been severed. So what that will do frequently is just tin the front of that ground cord a little bit and go ahead and stick it in the hole before they drive that thimble into that hole. And it looks like when they did that, they just sheared the wire right off. So the wire is cut clean as if somebody just snapped it. So I never even retrieved the piece of wire out of the inside. I don't know if it was ever in there, if it just never made good contact to begin with. But that wire was inside that small hole right next to that thimble, which is supposed to be the ground for the bridge. I discover another problem, which I see already as I'm watching the video, but the white wire for that pickup was almost completely off as well for that bridge pickup right there, which I don't discover till I'm trying to put it back together and when I'm having errors with the bridge pickup. Here I'm getting a nice shot, or hopefully trying to get a good shot of how cleanly that was cut off by the thimble that is the treble side of that saddle assembly, what holds that saddle assembly in place. And there's just tons of real estate. So the first thing I got to do is get this thimble out of there or get something attached to it. So the cheap and silly way of doing that would just be a run of wire, try to get that thimble hot enough to get solder to stick to, and call it a day and have a wire sticking underneath the pick guard. But the right way of doing it is taking the thimble out. So to take the thimble out, now we are starting to get a little bit more in depth. Look up a little online to get some hints from other people, and it seems the best way of doing it is to heat it up with a soldering iron, which requires to protect the body a little bit, and then by heating it, because these are more than likely even fixed with a little glue in some cases. So just prying it out won't get it out. So I spent several hours trying to do this cleanly, and I did get it done cleanly, successfully. And what we ended up using was a small 40-watt soldering iron. I had to protect it with some painter's tape around the outside. I'm using a small spatula that I use on acoustic guitars for bridges, little 30-watt soldering iron. And this is the kind of stuff that can make you a little nervous here. There's all kinds of things here that you don't want to solder. You don't want to solder paint finish. You don't want to solder pick guard. You don't want to solder pickup covers, pickups. You don't want to solder any of the other wires. So you'll notice that I'm using some drapery cloth around the whole body of the guitar and everything. Every time I'm working on it, it's similar to what they do in surgery. I'm draping off everything else that isn't getting worked on, right down to the components there. You can see there I went ahead and put several layers of painter's tape around that thimble on the treble side. And then I can't get good shots of it while I'm doing it because I have to hold all this stuff out of the way. But I was going through some courses of putting that soldering iron right inside there, and finally I did get it hot enough to be able to lift it up. I did remove the tape at this point just to make sure I didn't have any damage. It came out nice and clean. At that point, I'm going to take this thimble then, and then I have to take that and get a ground on it so I don't have the same problem again. Also, the existing wire, even though it's tinned in there, is a little short. And I don't want to have anybody else who takes that pickup guard off, just pull it again and break the ground. So I'm put a good amount of tinning of good clean solder on the end of that thimble where it will go onto the inside of that cavity. And then I got some nice, very retrofit cloth covered black ground wire. Put it inside that channel, and then this is actually on top of the guitar with everything covering the guitar. And then I'm made a nice clean solder joint to the ground, which I have at the very bottom of the thimble now, so that I was able to insert that wire in, pull it through with a good solder joint in, and at that point in time, we'll give you a sound sample here in a second. But we get that all put together, only to find out afterwards I got my ground problem fixed, but I'm still in for other issues. So in a moment here, you'll see we got this all put back together. And now I got that white wire was barely making contact. You can see from the end of it, it didn't break off, but now I have to take this whole pickup out as well. So it's not a big deal. I take out the 4 screws for the pickup itself, and I take off the whole entire pickup enclosure with the screws right where they are, and I put it in the case. Same orientation. Now I got to pick up this this pickup. You can see that lead side that's now further away from the camera at this point, is just completely broken off. It's a half cold solder, and it was more than likely that to begin with. We weren't getting any of the hum canceling of the pickups, and we were having all kinds of problem. So anyway, while we're inside, we were testing everything and found this, so I go ahead and solder that up.
There.
Yeah.
And then we got a tone. This is a 22 picofarad capacitor on this tone, and that is a 1 meg pot right here. And then that's a 2-way switch. Putting it down puts us into the lead channel, which makes all these controls active, which is, again, a 1 meg volume pot on this guitar. This is a, I think this might also be it's a different capacitor there, but I don't think that's the 22. 3-way switch, that's humbucking now in the middle. Bridge pickup, middle pickup. Beautifully clear.
That sounds awesome.
Now the neck pickup, the coolest thing is that when they put it through the different potentiometers on the top, even though the volume's up all the way on this and the tone's up all the way, they still sound different. Lots of cool sounds out of this thing. Cool. Okay, now the climb, which almost matches this. Put it in humbucking down here in parallel.
Dude, that's loud as fuck.
Yeah,
teeny
yeah,
bit.
sorry.
I'm sorry, I'm a baby.
It's so low on here already.
But throw on the con and something
Yeah.
trebly or something crazy. Yeah.
The other thing I can do is use decline with the gain channel of this, which this is the gain channel without decline. This amp doesn't clean up as well as the other one. I think this amp itself sounds a little muddy right now.
Still, it's a cool quality to the. Yeah.
And
There you
there's
go.
the decline. And then this itself has a gain, a treble, and an output. And the more I turn this output up with the tubes too, you can hear it already.
Oh, that sounds great.
Very heavy. And that's the neck pickup right there.